Siberia, Russian Empire territory. October 1881. While his neighbors raised timber frames against the coming winter, Ivan Petrov did something that made them question his sanity. He took a pickaxe to a hillside and started digging into the earth itself. "He's building a grave for his family," muttered Dmitry Volkov, the settlement's most experienced builder. "Mark my words, they'll freeze before February." But what those Siberian pioneers dismissed as madness was actually ancient engineering refined over centuries in the harshest climates on Earth. What did this Russian settler understand about thermal mass and Earth insulation that frontier builders had completely overlooked? Before we reveal how Ivan Petrov's insane tunnel home outperformed every conventional ISBA in the region, hit that like button and subscribe to this channel, and drop a comment below telling us where you're watching from, because the survival wisdom works anywhere winter bites hard. Subscribe now, and I promise you'll learn frontier engineering techniques that could literally save your life in a grid-down scenario. The afternoon Ivan Petrov announced a construction plan. 17 settlers gathered at Kuznetsov's trading post to hear him out. What they heard sounded like frontier suicide. "I will dig into Bear Hill," Ivan explained in his careful Russian, rolling out a hand-drawn schematic on the rough-hewn counter. 16 feet deep into the south face. Stone foundation at the entrance. Sod roof over the excavation. Ventilation shaft through the hillside peak. Dmitry Volkov, who built 23 ISBAs across 3 regions, didn't hide his contempt. "You're talking about a dirt hole. Petrov, a glorified root cellar. Where's your firebox going to draw? How will you keep moisture from rotting everything you own? This isn't the old villages. Siberian winter will kill you deader than a doornail." The other men nodded. They'd spent years perfecting the art of the frontier ISBA. Tight chink logs, stone chimneys, shake roofs. Every successful homestead followed the same proven formula. Ivan Petrov was proposing something that sounded primitive, backwards, possibly fatal. "My grandfather lived in a Zemlyanka in Yamal," Ivan said quietly. 70 kilometers north of Sailcard, winter temperatures reached 40 below. His home was cut into the earth. "My family survived there for 4 generations. This ain't Yamal," Volkov shot back. "And your grandfather ain't here to dig you out when that hillside collapses on your wife and children." But Ivan had already purchased the hillside claim. The deed was recorded. And by the first week of November 1881, with snow already dusting the peaks, he was 20 feet into Bear Hill with nothing to show but a dark hole and a growing pile of excavated clay. Maria Petrov, his wife, fielded the concerned visits. "He knows what he's doing," she told the women who came bearing warnings disguised as charity. But even Maria, watching their savings disappear into that hillside, felt doubt creeping in during the long November nights. What Ivan Petrov was building defied every principle of frontier construction his neighbors understood, but it followed principles far older, principles written into the earth itself. He excavated 16 feet into the hillside at a slight upward angle, creating a tunnel 22 feet long and 12 feet wide. The entry faced precisely southeast, calculated to catch the low winter sun, while avoiding the prevailing northwest winds that screamed down from the Urals. At the entrance, Ivan constructed a foundation of stacked sandstone, each piece selected for its flat-bearing surface. The stone wall extended 18 and into the earth on both sides, creating a thermal break between the outside air and the excavated interior. The door frame itself was set back 4 feet from the exterior wall, creating an entry vestibule that trapped cold air before it could penetrate the main chamber. Inside, the tunnel opened into a primary living space 12 by 20 feet with an 8-foot ceiling. Ivan carved sleeping alcoves directly into the clay walls, 3 separate chambers, each 18 in deep, that would hold straw-filled mattresses off the main floor. At the far end, he installed a small corner firebox constructed from fire brick he'd hauled from Tobolsk, with a flue pipe that ran horizontally for 6 feet before angling upward through a carefully engineered ventilation shaft. The brilliance lay in what his neighbors couldn't see. At 16 feet of depth, the surrounding earth maintained a constant temperature of approximately 52 degrees Fahrenheit, 11 degrees Celsius year-round. A thermal battery that neither froze in winter nor overheated in summer. The clay walls, 2 feet thick on all sides, created an insulation barrier with an R value roughly equivalent to 12 in a modern fiberglass. Ivan installed the ventilation shaft at the tunnel's rear, boring upward at a 70 degrees angle until it broke through the hillside 28 feet above the living chamber. He lined it with split cedar and fitted a rotating cap at the top, a design borrowed from traditional Siberian zemlyanka that created consistent draft while preventing downdrafts during high winds. By December 15th, with temperatures already dropping below zero, Ivan moved his family into the tunnel. They carried in their possessions, hung canvas partitions across the sleeping alcoves, and lit their first fire in the corner stove. The neighbors watched with pity, certain they were witnessing the beginning of a frontier tragedy. Dmitry Volkov made his professional assessment on December 18th. He stood in Ivan Petrov's tunnel home for exactly 7 minutes before delivering his verdict at Kuznetsov's trading post that evening. "It's a death trap," Volkov announced to the assembled settlers. Moisture's already condensing on the walls. There's barely enough draw in that flue to keep a candle lit, let alone a proper fire. The man's got his family sleeping in a damp hole with inadequate ventilation and a firebox that can't possibly heat 12,200 cubic feet of space. The critique carried weight. Volkov wasn't just experienced. He was the closest thing the region had to a building authority. When he condemned Ivan's design, the community consensus solidified. The Russian had made a fatal mistake. "Give it 3 weeks," predicted Kuznetsov, the trading post owner. "When the deep cold hits, when temperatures drop to 20 below, 30 below, that tunnel is going to be uninhabitable. The moisture alone will make them sick. And if that clay ceiling collapses from frost heave," he didn't finish the sentence. He didn't need to. The Women's Auxiliary, led by Anna Volkov, organized a relief plan. They would take in the Petrov children when, not if, the tunnel home failed. Maria Petrov would find refuge with the Kuznetsovs. Ivan himself, they figured, would have to swallow his pride and accept that Siberian frontier wisdom had been earned through hard experience, not imported from some frozen northern village. Meanwhile, the Petrov family settled into their strange new home. Ivan added a second canvas layer across the entry vestibule. He banked earth against the exterior stone wall, creating an additional insulation berm, and every evening he burned a small, carefully managed fire in his corner stove. Never the roaring blazes his neighbors maintained, just a modest flame that his neighbors interpreted as another sign of inadequate heating. "He's rationing wood because he knows it won't help," Volkov told anyone who'd listen. "That tunnel's pulling heat straight into the earth. It's thermal suicide." By January 1st, 1882, the entire settlement had written off Ivan Petrov's tunnel home as an experiment in frontier folly. The only question remaining was how bad things would get before the Russian admitted defeat. Then the weather changed everything. January 12th, 1882, the thermometer outside Kuznetsov's trading post read -38 degrees Fahrenheit, -39 degrees Celsius at dawn. By noon, it had climbed to -35 degrees Fahrenheit, -37 degrees Celsius, the warmest it would get for the next 11 days. The cold that descended on the region that January wasn't just severe. It was the kind of cold that killed livestock in their barns, that froze water buckets solid in kitchens within an hour, that turned exposed skin black with frostbite in under 3 minutes. The kind of cold that made survival a full-time occupation. In the settlement's conventional izbas, families fought desperate battles against the temperature. Dmitry Volkov's home, built with double chink walls, a massive stone fireplace, and a full season's worth of firewood stacked inside, required feeding the fire every 45 minutes around the clock. Even then, temperatures inside hovered between 41 degrees Fahrenheit and 48 degrees Fahrenheit, 5 to 9 degrees Celsius, except in the immediate vicinity of the firebox, where it reached a bearable 62 degrees Fahrenheit, 17 degrees Celsius. The Kuznetsov family burned through 8 cords of split pine in those 11 days. The Ivanovs, in their slightly smaller izba, consumed 6.5 cords. Every family measured their survival in diminishing wood piles, in smoke-stung eyes, in the exhaustion of maintaining continuous fires, while also caring for livestock and breaking ice for water. Sleep became impossible in shifts longer than the time between feedings. Children huddled 3 and 4 to a bed under every available blanket. Condensation from breathing froze in crystalline patterns on interior walls. Several families moved their sleeping arrangements directly alongside their fireplaces, accepting the smoke in exchange for survivable temperatures. On January 16th, when the temperature hit minus 42 degrees Fahrenheit, minus 41 degrees Celsius, the lowest anyone in the settlement could remember, Anna Volkov made the trek to check on the Petrov family. She expected to find them in crisis, possibly already preparing to evacuate. Hit that like button and subscribe now. What Anna Volkov discovered at the tunnel home that day changed frontier building across the region. Don't miss what happens next. Drop a comment telling us where you're watching from. And let's keep the survival wisdom alive. What she found instead made her question everything she thought she understood about winter survival. The tunnel entrance stood partially drifted with snow, but a clear path led to the recessed doorway. Anna knocked, expecting to interrupt some desperate warming effort. Maria Petrov opened the door wearing a simple wool dress. No heavy coat, no layers of blankets wrapped around her shoulders. "Anna, come in, please. Coffee's hot." The interior temperature, measured later that day, when Dmitry Volkov insisted on personally verifying what his wife reported, read 64 degrees Fahrenheit, 18 degrees Celsius in the main living chamber. The sleeping alcoves, buffered by canvas partitions and body heat, measured 67 degrees Fahrenheit, 19 degrees Celsius. And Ivan's corner stove held a fire no larger than what you'd use to brew tea. A modest flame, consuming perhaps 1/4 the wood of a conventional heating fire. The Petrov children played on the dirt floor in bare feet. Maria's bread dough rose on a shelf near the living chamber center, not requiring placement near the stove. The air was dry, not damp, the ventilation shaft creating a constant, gentle circulation that pulled moisture up and out while drawing fresh air to the carefully designed entry vestibule. "How much would it be burnt?" Anna asked, her voice hollow with disbelief. Ivan gestured to a neat stack along the western wall. 1 1/4 cord since November. I split another half cord outside, but we have not needed it yet. Anna Volkov did the math. In the same period, her family had consumed nearly 14 cords. The tunnel home was operating at approximately 11% of the fuel consumption while maintaining higher interior temperatures. It was by every measure that mattered impossible. Except it was happening. The Earth itself was doing the work. By January 20th, when the brutal cold finally broke and temperatures climbed to an almost balmy 12 degrees Fahrenheit, minus 11 degrees Celsius, Dmitry Volkov stood in Ivan Petrov's tunnel home with a pencil, paper, and a determination to understand what he'd gotten wrong. The evidence was irrefutable. While Volkov's own ISBA had consumed 11.3 cord of firewood during the cold snap, the Petrov family had burned through exactly 1.4 cords, an efficiency ratio of 8-1. More striking was the comfort differential. The tunnel home maintained consistent temperatures between 62 degrees Fahrenheit and 68 degrees Fahrenheit, 17 to 20 degrees Celsius. Throughout the crisis, while conventional ISBAs fluctuated wildly between 38 degrees Fahrenheit near walls and 65 degrees Fahrenheit within 3 feet of roaring fires. But the numbers only told part of the story. The tunnel home's performance represented a fundamental rethinking of heating physics that frontier builders had completely missed. "The Earth is your firebox," Ivan explained, walking Volkov through the principles his grandfather had taught him in Yamal. At 16-foot depth, the surrounding clay holds 52 degrees year-round. This is your baseline, not the outside air temperature. My stove does not fight minus 40 degrees air. It raises the temperature from 52 to 68, only 16 degrees of work. Volkov examined the clay walls, touching them tentatively. They were cool, but not cold, roughly the temperature of a spring cellar. The thermal mass of thousands of cubic feet of earth, all holding steady at that constant 52 degrees Fahrenheit, created a heat battery that small fires could nudge upward, but which massive cold could barely affect. The ventilation shaft, which Volkov had mocked as inadequate, performed a dual function. It drew smoke upward efficiently while creating a gentle circulation pattern that distributed heat evenly throughout the space. The heated air rose, moved along the ceiling, cooled slightly, and descended along the walls. A natural convection current that required no fans, no complicated ductwork, no external energy. The sleeping alcoves carved directly into the clay acted as individual thermal chambers. Body heat alone raised their temperature 3 to 5 degrees above the main chamber, and the canvas partitions trapped that warmth while allowing air exchange. It was passive engineering of breathtaking efficiency. The moisture, Volkov said, still searching for flaws. You said yourself the walls would condense in autumn. Yes, when the warm air met cool earth. But now in deep winter, the earth is warmer than the outside air. The moisture moves outward into frozen soil. The ventilation shaft pulls it away before it accumulates. In spring, for 3 weeks, we will have condensation again as the cycle reverses. We wipe the walls daily, a small price. Within 6 weeks of the cold snap, detailed accounts of the tunnel home's performance had spread throughout the region and into neighboring settlements. Volkov himself, to his credit, began modifying his thinking. At Kuznetsov's trading post on February 14th, he made a public statement that took considerable humility. I was wrong about Petrov's design. Completely wrong. What he built isn't primitive. It's sophisticated engineering that most of us were too ignorant to recognize. Any man building in hard winter country should consider earth sheltering before defaulting to conventional ISBA construction. By late spring of 1882, 3 families had approached Ivan about helping them design earth shelter homes. By autumn, that number had grown to 11, and by the winter of 1883 to 1884, 14 tunnel homes or partial earth shelter structures had been constructed across the territory, each one a testament to the power of ancient wisdom applied to frontier survival. By 1885, the tunnel home phenomenon had spread far beyond the immediate region. From the Urals to the Siberian expanses, earth shelter construction became a recognized, even preferred building technique for homesteaders facing brutal winters with limited resources. Regional records from the period noted fuel efficiency improvements ranging from 650% to 820% compared to conventional log construction, with the added benefit of reduced fire risk, a critical consideration in regions where an ISBA fire in January could mean death before morning. But the story of Ivan Petrov's tunnel home revealed something more profound than mere building innovation. It exposed a dangerous arrogance that had taken root in frontier culture. The assumption that traditional knowledge from other lands or deeper traditions was automatically inferior to local ingenuity, that primitive and sophisticated were geographic rather than technical distinctions. Ivan's design wasn't a Russian invention. It was a convergence point of earth-sheltering wisdom refined across millennia and continents. The ancient Siberian Zemlyanka that sustained families through centuries of Arctic winters. The Chinese Yaodong cave dwellings housing millions across the Lus Plateau, maintaining stable temperatures in regions where summer heat topped 100 degrees Fahrenheit and winter cold dropped below zero. The native pit houses of distant lands, semi-subterranean structures that predated modern contact by thousands of years and solved the exact same thermal challenges Ivan faced in Siberia. If you found this story valuable, smash that like button and subscribe to this channel. We're documenting survival wisdom that mainstream history ignores. Techniques that could save your life when modern systems fail. Comment below with where you're watching from and what traditional building methods exist in your region. Your subscription helps preserve this knowledge for the next generation. Dmitry Volkov, to his lasting credit, became one of earth sheltering's most vocal advocates in the territory. In an 1886 letter to the Regional Building Council, he wrote, "We dismiss Petrov's design as ignorant because it came from old village ways. The ignorance was ours. We had mistaken unfamiliarity for primitivism and nearly cost a family their lives because of our arrogance." The Petrov tunnel home stood occupied until 1923, when Ivan's grandson modified it with concrete reinforcement and expanded electrical service. The core structure, those 16 feet of excavated clay, that sandstone foundation, that carefully engineered ventilation shaft, remained unchanged for 42 years, outlasting dozens of conventional ISBAs that rotted, burned, or collapsed under snow load. In 1968, researchers documented the site as part of a vernacular architecture survey. The abandoned tunnel, though no longer heated, maintained an interior temperature of 54 degrees Fahrenheit, 12 degrees Celsius, when outside air measured 8 degrees Fahrenheit minus 13 degrees Celsius, still pulling thermal stability from the Earth itself. still demonstrating principles that modern building science was only beginning to rediscover under terms like passive geothermal and earth-integrated architecture. The lesson extended beyond construction techniques. It spoke to a pattern that repeated across frontier history. The reflexive dismissal of knowledge that arrived in unfamiliar packages, spoken with old accents, built with methods that didn't match established norms. How many other innovations died stillborn because communities lacked the humility to recognize wisdom when it appeared outside expected forms? The winter of 1882 had proven something that settlers initially refused to accept. Traditional knowledge wasn't the enemy of survival. It was often survival's foundation. What they called primitive was actually sophisticated engineering tested across generations, refined through centuries of trial and error more rigorous than any single builder's experience. Ivan Petrov's tunnel home saved his family that brutal January, but its larger legacy was humility, the understanding that dismissing traditional knowledge as backwards often revealed not their ignorance, but ours. The earth remembers what humans forget. Sometimes survival means having the wisdom to listen.